In this video, we're going to discuss surety bonds. This is from Chapter 27 of the Rata McNamara text. Let's start by looking at a definition of surety bonds. Surety bonds are a risk transfer mechanism, just like insurance is a risk transfer mechanism. The distinction is that surety bonds are used primarily for contractual risk transfer, whereas insurance normally cannot insure risk that is assumed by contract. Surety bonds can generally be defined as providing monetary compensation if the bonded party or principal fails to perform. We'll look at some examples in a moment, but first, let's look at a comparison of surety to insurance, which will help us to understand what surety really is. Insurance, which is also a risk transfer mechanism, has two parties to the contract, the insured and the insurance company. An exception is when there's a life insurance contract with a named beneficiary. Some people think that liability insurance is an exception, but remember that the claimant on a liability contract, the person who is injured and gets money from the insurance company, is not actually named in the contract, so they're not a party to the contract. Only the insured, who is liable for the accident, and the insurance company. Another difference is that insurance companies expect to pay some losses under insurance contracts. In fact, as soon as the policy incepts, they begin to have to reserve for losses that are occurring, even if those losses haven't been reported to them. The insurer normally does not have the right to recover a loss payment from the insured. The exception is when the insured sells damaged property for which the insurer has paid them the total insured value. They have to give that money to the insurance company up to the total insured value they received from the insurer. Or, another way of saying it is, they must return the salvage to the insurer. And last, insurance is for fortuitous losses. Remember that to be insurable, losses should be random, accidental, and beyond the insured's control. That is fortuitous. But now let's look at surety. With surety, there are three parties to the contract. We'll see who those parties are in just a moment. Theoretically, the surety bonding company expects that they will pay out zero. When they issue a bond, they assume that the bonded party or principal will perform. And if they do pay out some amount of money under the bond, the surety has a legal right to recover payment from the bonded party. The surety is legally entitled to payment from the bonded party or principal for losses paid by the surety on behalf of the principal. And the surety is providing a guarantee. The bond guarantees the bonded party's honesty, integrity, character, and ability to perform. And this is not a fortuitous loss. At least to some extent, the loss is in the bonded party's control. Now let's look at the different parties to a surety bond. First, there is the principal. The principal is the one who agrees to perform certain acts. An example is a contractor. And they are also the bonded party in a surety bond. They're the ones that purchase the bond. Then there's the obligee. This is the party to whom the principal is obligated. For example, an owner, someone who the contractor agrees to build property for or add on to a specific building. The obligee is paid if the principal fails to perform. And then there's the surety, also known as the obligor. The surety pays the obligee if the principal fails to perform. They agree to answer for the debt, default, or failure to perform of another. Remember, they guarantee the honesty and integrity and ability to perform of the principal. Last, let's look at types of surety bonds. There are contract bonds. Let's look more specifically at some examples of contract bonds, which are probably the most popular form of surety bond. Sometimes these are referred to as contractor bonds. A bid bond guarantees the winner of a bid will perform as promised. Many times, in order to even bid on a project, you must have a bid bond. A performance bond which guarantees the owner that work will be completed according to specifications, and a payment bond, which guarantees that labor and materials used in the building will be paid when bills are due, and then a maintenance bond, which guarantees poor workmanship will be corrected or defective materials will be replaced, generally after the project has been completed. So many times, a single contractor will have to have all 4 types of bonds in order to get a project. Next, there's license and permit bonds, which guarantees that the bonded person will comply with regulations. Then there's public official bonds, which of course only need to be purchased by a public official. This guarantees a public official, such as a police juror in the state of Louisiana, will fulfill their duties and not steal or engage in other dishonest acts. Then there are judicial bonds. These guarantee that the bonded person will fulfill legal obligations, such as to show up in court, like a bail bond. And last, there are federal surety bonds, which guarantee compliance with federal standards similar to the license and permit bonds. And that's the end of our discussion of surety bonds.